What's up, guys? Welcome back to FishOfHex. Today I'm back here with Mike Lemming. Got some new headphones here so I can actually hear people when they talk to me. Anyways, we're going to talk about fish and cleanup crew today. We're going to do some beginner questions that Mike has regarding his system. And so let's go ahead and get into it. What's up, Mike?
What's up, guys? First off, I wanted to compliment you on those cute headphones you got on.
They work pretty well.
They look really nice. So
Dickhead.
just to throw this out there, I appreciate you guys watching. I don't have that many views on my Q&A videos, but I know Travis has a ton. I've gained, more subscribers, so I appreciate you guys watching. It's nice to get feedback that people are actually saying, keep them coming. So me being a new guy to the hobby and Travis being used to all these views, it's just nice to see somebody appreciates it. But let's just dive right in. I've made up some questions today at work. So let's get into it. So my first question, and guys, this is a fish and cleanup crew topic. There's a lot of questions that people have, so I'm just going to dive in. First off, this is one thing that a lot of guys jumping into the hobby kind of overdo. But my question is like, what's your thoughts on like the inch per gallon, or like how many fish can you have in a tank, basically?
Well,
Everybody says 1 inch
yeah.
per gallon. I don't really find that true, but you know more than I do.
Yeah, I mean the inch like per gallon is a pretty safe rule to go by, but it will depend on what your maintenance schedule is, or what you have for a skimmer, or how much rock you have in the tank. The biological filtration will all dictate how many fish you have. I mean, ideally, even something with a biopellet reactor, you can have more fish because you're able to pull out that, and with a refugium, you pull out those excess nutrients. But I think an inch per gallon is definitely a safe way to go for people who are just starting out. Once you get more advanced, I mean, you can have several more fish. It just also how the fish get along with each other. You're gonna have to do what's the word I'm looking for? Basically, personality dependent, and how the fish react to each other will
Yeah, because
also
I've
kind of
heard people
yeah.
say that that inch per gallon rule is BS.
Hmm.
It's all about what you're filtrating your
Hmm.
tank with, what filtration you have, what skimmer you have. And this even brings it back to freshwater. I just had a hang on the back, and people are telling me, they say I have a 10 gallon, and so 10 inches of fish. I had, just a little school of tetras, and that was damn near 10 inches, and it was only
Hmm.
like six of them. So
Yeah.
I've heard that it's all about their filtration. So
Hmm. That's
I'm
true.
sure the
Yeah.
more experienced reefer and freshwater guy can probably get away with more. But a lot of people will probably still have questions about that.
Hmm.
Um, so this is about buying fish. Do you think, like, you go to the local fish store, you're looking for a new fish. They have a group of clowns. Are you looking for the most juvenile, the most small? You looking for something mid-size? You looking for like a full-grown? Like when you go, what are you looking for as far as size?
Well, as for size, obviously, the bigger the fish is, the more mature it is. Ideally, longer it's been alive, it's built up on immunities to several things. So, bigger fish usually do well compared to compared to smaller fish. When it comes to like something like a clownfish, something like that, I will pick the adult over the smaller one,
Really?
just because same with actually, especially I'll mention this in my hippo tang video, but smaller fish such as a hippo tang, really the mortality rate is really, really high, and that's one of the reasons why I went ahead and bought a 5.5 inch hippo tank from the beginning, and improved my chances of survival. So ideally the bigger fish is more what I'm looking for. So
Yeah, because I've heard, you know how the internet is. People say one thing, somebody else says
hmm.
the other thing, and then a third person comes in and throws a curveball and it says something different.
Hmm.
I've heard people say bigger stuff like what you're saying is because they've been in captivity for a little while. Like most of the bigger fish have probably been in a fish tank for a few months to grow that way. But I've also heard to get small stuff because they'll grow to your tank. They will get to know you. You'll. It's kind of like a puppy. You buy a puppy,
Hmm.
you buy it small, and then you can basically raise it how you want. It gets acquainted to you, and it just like I've seen people get little like inch-sized blue tangs, and now they can like hand feed it. I think you can hand feed a couple of your fish. So again, that's another question that I had personally that I'm sure other people have.
Well, I don't really
Um,
know the memory of what a fish has and related to it growing up with you being there. I mean, I'm not a scientist, so I don't really know what the short-term memory of a hippo tang is. But um, most fish that you buy, 90% of them, I'd say, roughly are wild caught. So they've never been in the tank.
well,
Yeah, I mean, every hippo tang that you see out there is wild
it is,
caught.
yeah.
And that's a lot. It is with a lot of species because we haven't really developed ways to breed them.
I think
Um,
that's a goal of mine. I might be the
Yeah,
first guy to breed a hippo
hippo
tank.
tank. Yeah, yeah. You and everybody else. Yeah.
So on to the next one, and could be a stupid question because I'm pretty sure I know how you feel about this, but not everybody knows. Quarantining,
Hmm.
quarantine everything, whether it's from your friend's tank, from the LFS, from Petco, from online. You quarantine every single fish you
Hmm.
get, right?
Yep. Every fish cleanup crew, I don't quarantine. Um, but when I do add cleanup crew, I do it smaller amounts at a time, just in case they come with something. I make sure the shells are clean, all that stuff. But
Yeah.
as for fish, everything gets quarantined.
And
Go ahead.
what's your life cycle for quarantine? Because I know you do it for quite
Four
a
weeks.
what
It's
4 weeks.
4 weeks, and then if I get say 2 weeks in, something gets like ick or something like that, or shows signs of illness, I will start the quarantine period over at the point. If I get ick, I usually drop it down to hypo for 6 weeks, and then back up for 4 weeks. So that's a long process.
And when you say hypo, you mean lower the salinity for those who
Hyposalinity,
don't
yeah,
know.
1.009,
So,
yeah.
so another thing is like when you put them into quarantine, you're not doing anything different. You're just
Mm.
feeding them and watching them, right? You're not
Yep.
dosing nothing. All right, because
Hmm.
that's something I want to do. I mean, I'm trying to with this new setup. I want to have a quarantine under my tank. Like I
Hmm.
want to have my sump here and a small quarantine right here, just for the sake of the wifey not yelling at me for having
Hmm.
another tank up and running. So that's what I'm trying to do. Um, so that's another thing that you put on your video recently, the video last night or whatever is the 30 things. Quarantining and patience. Like
Hmm.
that's one thing I don't have. So I'm gonna have to learn to be patient because when you get like a 30-gallon like mine, it's still tough. I can't get out the 6-line wrasse. But when I put a 75 in there, or you get the 75 going, and I have 70 pounds of rock, I can't get anything out. So that's a good thing.
Hmm.
Quarantine to make sure everything's healthy and make sure it's eating. That's really good. I need to learn to be patient about
Well, you
everything.
need to look at the repercussions of not quarantining. I mean, right now, with the amount of fish I have in my tank, if I was to, I mean, the risk is too high. Losing everything and then having the tank be fallow for 6 months to a year, it's just ridiculous. It's not worth the risk. And
Yeah.
you kind of have to experience and have the downfall to appreciate quarantining.
So here's a question. So if you throw blue hippo tang. We've been talking about that. You
Mm.
throw a hippo tang in your quarantine. It's eating fine. It's doing great. And you see no problem, say 4 weeks into putting it into your main tank. There's still got to be some kind of percentage of stress
Hmm.
that could bring on that hippo tang's ick again, just from simply taking it to quarantine into the new tank, right?
Hmm. Well, usually the stress alone from shipping and stuff really brings out the ick and or brings out parasites that they might have gotten on the way. The thing is remember that tile goby that I purchased that was in quarantine for 4 weeks. That was in my tank for 2 weeks, and then he starved himself to death. And the cleanup crew was picking him up off the bottom of the tank. So
Yeah.
just because you go through quarantine doesn't mean that the fish is going to survive the main tank lifestyle.
Yeah.
Um, Unfortunately, he passed. He just wouldn't eat after. I mean, he ate every single day in quarantine, and then just when he got in the main tank, it didn't work
I
out that way.
guess, this hobby, you take it with a grain of salt, right?
Yeah.
Next question, and this is something that I did not do, um, but with the 75, I will. Planning your order of fish additions, like, I'm not going to throw a yellow tang and a blue tang and then throw in some cardinal or pajama cardinals or something. You should plan out your fish additions, right?
To a certain extent, you're going to want to look at if you're going to do tangs. I always recommend that you do all your tangs at one time, and have them roughly the same size. That way, they can kind of weed out, the pecking order. I know that I added my blue hippo after myself in, but she's a little bit bigger than he is, and they go at it, but there's really no that much aggression. But when it comes to like something like tangs, you kind of want to add them all at one time, and I know that can be difficult because tangs are expensive. But the rule of thumb is, say you add two tangs when you first start your system, and you want to add another one like 3 or 4 months later. Try to buy one of roughly the same size, because if they're around the same size, then that one can at least defend himself.
Then they can deal with it on their own.
Yeah, yeah. So, and then when things, like if they're different species like clownfish and cardinals and stuff like that, uh, you know, you can add those whatever. I mean, I wouldn't go ahead and add like 10 clownfish at one time, because the pecking order and they're going to be each other, and cardinals have to be kind of grouped together as well. So. really tangs are the only thing that I would consider kind of having to play that game with them.
Yeah. Next question. I'm sure you've done a video on this, but to watch the video, you probably got to run through 150 videos a year to find it. Good for you, by the way.
Yeah.
So, process of acclimation, like what are you doing? You get your new fish, regardless what it is, you bring it home. What do you do?
Well, I usually float the bag for 20 to 30 minutes just to get temperature, and then I put the bag, or I dump the contents into like a bowl or a 5-gallon bucket, and then I drip that for, depending on the species, something like a damsel or a clownfish or something that's more hardier, I will drip for maybe 20 minutes or so, but something like a sensitive like a blue hippo or something like that, I would drip for a longer period of time, up to 45 minutes before adding them into a tank. So.
And then once it's all done, you just net it, throw it in, and hope for the
Yep,
best.
take it out. Yeah, but I also my quarantine system. I have the PVC set up in there. I don't have any lights. It's dark in that room, so they get a good. Once they get introduced in the quarantine system, it's dark and they have time to pretty much get ready.
So
change,
so
adapt to
that's
the
a good
environment.
question. You don't have lights on your quarantine system.
No, there's no need. I mean, there's
So what do you
no.
keep that? Because it's like a walk-in closet, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So do you just keep that door open all the time, or is it
No,
just always pitch black?
it's always pitch black.
Oh,
The Zeovit was when the Zeovit was in there, that took care of itself with its own lighting. But quarantine doesn't need light. Fish don't need light to be happy. But I mean, I do go in there every day. When I get up in the morning, when I do have quarantine though, I do like to have my lights on a little bit more during the day, even if I'm not in there, because the fish needs to realize that it's daylight and it needs to swim around and needs to be active and eat. If it's dark all the time, the fish is going to think it's time to sleep and all that stuff, and it can really impact its health if that goes on for days and days and days and days and days. But yeah, a day without light is not a big deal, but several days will be an issue.
yeah. So kind of off topic. If back to what I was saying, if I do throw a quarantine, say it's a 10-gallon that's down near my sump under my tank, I have the one bulb like floodlight. So that'd be fine, right? It's not directed right at the tank. Like
Well,
it's
you're
just
going to
gonna be
have a
enough light to
refugium, right?
see.
You're
What's
having
that?
you're having a refugium, correct?
Of course.
Yeah, then that light from when your refugium is on is more than enough light for that
Okay.
whole
So you can
stand.
at least see what's going on.
Yeah, yeah. Generally, if there's light down there from your refugium during the off cycle, it does. That's going to be fine. You won't need to put a separate light over if it's in the same general area. You'll be fine.
Yeah. One thing I've thought about, and I told you this before, like I've bought fish, they look great at the store, look great in my tank, and then my whites turned off, and then that's when really like magnifies the ick or whatever it has. I have this little tiny like clip-on light. It's like a 3 watt. It's probably like 30 bulbs, but combined it's only 3 watts. Can I like set that on the same timer? I mean, it's like nothing light, but it'd just be nice to see my fish under blue light just to see. If I set that the same timer with my refugium, I mean, that's all right, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, ideally, you're going to see ick regardless if it's white or blue. I mean, you'll pick up on little things more in the blue light. You can do that if you want, but ideally, you have enough light from your refugium. If you want the blue to just kind of check out the fish, that's fine. But I wouldn't have it on like an opposite schedule or refugium or anything like
No.
that because you just want to have that one period of light.
Yeah. All right. So these are the first like 5 questions were kind of guided at or kind of aimed at me and everybody else. This is more aimed at me because I don't know what everybody else has going on for their tanks and their new tanks. Yellow tang in a 4 foot 75. What do you think?
Depending on the size, if and I'm getting to this in my Hippotang video as well. Purchasing, you got to realize that the fish is going to grow. You have to, when purchasing a fish, you need to do the research and decide if it's going to, your environment that you're making is going to be suitable for this fish its entire life. Now, I know that you're probably going to upgrade relatively quickly after the 75. If you buy a small yellow tang, that's fine, but be prepared to upgrade as needed because I mean I've had massive yellow tangs, and the reality is they need the swimming room and you need to be able to provide that environment. So you do what you want when it comes to that, but I wouldn't recommend anything smaller than a 6 foot tank for tangs in general.
So
That's just
yellow
personal
tang, blue
preference.
tang,
Any tank, I mean you can.
Naso, orange
Naso-
shoulder.
Yeah, well, nasals get really big, and I
They
mean the
get
blue
real
hippo
big.
tang gets a foot long. I mean that's no joke, man. I mean,
So
granted it takes years.
no blue hippo in my 75. You're saying?
I wouldn't do it. Two reasons. For one,
My
they
daughter
have
wants Dory,
they
bro.
had well everybody wants fucking Dory. I'm gonna get into that later. The thing is that you got to be prepared to upgrade. You got to be ready for that fish to grow. I mean, it's not going to
It'll
grow a foot.
happen.
It's not going to grow a foot overnight, but it's capable of doing. So you got to keep that in the back of your mind. Now you can buy a 2-inch blue hippo or a 2-inch yellow tang. You can put them in your 75. That's fine. You can do that,
And like a year from
and
now is
but
when I
be
know in my head I have to
you
go
have to you
bigger.
have to you have to have the mindset that you're gonna upgrade, but you actually have to upgrade when the time comes. You can't just settle like, oh well, he's been in here its whole life already. I'm just gonna leave it in there. That's not acceptable when it comes to fish keeping. And going back to that, when you look at freshwater, it's like everybody goes to the store and buys an Oscar because it's so personable. It's like you're screaming on black there, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh,
Exactly.
yeah, that's fine. It's like people go and buy an Oscar because it's like the puppy of the freshwater world. And the reality is that that fish is going to grow very quickly. And a lot of people are just throwing in 10 gallon because it's this big, but
Yeah.
it gets this big in 6 months. So uh, you can get what you want for fish, and I tell people to do what they want because it's human nature. You can do whatever you want, but just be aware that you need to be able to provide the environment for that fish its entire life,
Well, as you
regardless.
know, I mean, if I get the yellow or hippo,
Hmm.
you're in the saltwater hobby as well. You have a 125, you're ready to go bigger. I'm sure you're going to get a 250, and then a year from now, ready to upgrade to like a 400.
I'm actually
So,
going straight to a 400, but yeah.
all right, so you cut that out. So you're going to get a
Yeah,
400, then
yeah,
you're going to want to turn your swimming pool into a saltwater reef. So it's just how it is. You get in the hobby,
yeah.
you want to progress. So, I mean, knowing that I'm gonna go to like a big tank,
Hmm.
in my opinion, a big tank is like what you have with the 125,
Hmm.
or maybe even bigger. It'll happen eventually. It's just I kind of gotta like acclimate my girlfriend to the idea.
Yeah.
So it'll happen eventually. So I think if I were to throw in like a 2-inch blue tang in there, knowing that within a year from now I'll be at like a 125. So you think I'm good to go?
Yeah, you're fine. Just be aware that with that species in particular, the hippotang, the smaller you buy it, the more chance of mortality. So be aware of that when it comes to
Yeah.
buying the fish too. So.
All right. So there goes my next like 4 questions about tangs. Um,
Yeah. Sorry, man.
so we kind of talked about this briefly. You've said it in a video, but I told you I've had ick before in my tank, and
Hmm.
what I use is Cordon's Ick Attack. It's all natural. I've used it twice in my current tank. It didn't make any of the coral shrink up. All my invertebrates are fine, and it cured. I can't say cured it, but at least they were gone from the fish. Um, Everybody has their own way of doing it, and
Hmm.
yours is simply salinity, right?
Hyposalinity seems to be the ideal way for me to do it. Um, Copper has worked in the past as well, but like I said, you have yours already in the tank. I've really never ran across a product that I was able to cure ick efficiently in a reef tank. Now, I haven't tried it in a long, long time because I haven't had ick in my main display in a long time. But you Ick is a very, very strong parasite, and it takes a lot to penetrate its beginning stage. I can't remember the actual name of it, but it's basically like a hard shell, and that's the life cycle. It stays in for a long time. So being able to penetrate that and kill the parasite is very difficult. And I have never yet, and like I said, I've never found anything that I was able to actually do that efficiently. So maybe it does work. Maybe that one that you have does work in the reef tank, but only time will tell. To be honest with you, you'll find out within 6 weeks if it actually worked or not.
Yeah. So far it's worked, but we will see,
Hmm.
of course. Next question, and this is basically my last question for fish, is like when you walk into a local fish store, you're looking at a fish, you really want him. What are you looking for as far as disease?
The biggest thing is how the fish is swimming around. It kind of gives you an idea of not only of its personality, but you'll be able to tell how active it is. You're not going to get a fish that's laying on its side, obviously. So I'm looking at how it swims. If its stomach is puffy or like sunken in, usually means like a parasite or it's not being fed well. It could be various things. A lot of fish don't eat during transporting, so it could be just days without food. Um, Looking at their lips to see how if they're puffy or swollen. Obviously, ick, fin rot, beaten up by anybody else. Usually, fish will target another fish that's unhealthy. So if you have a fish that's got nipped fins, if it's in a tank full of damsels, that's to be expected. But if you have a bunch of tangs in there and then one of them just has a bunch of nip fins, most likely that tang is not doing well in the first place. So I would
So
stay away
basically,
with
it's
that.
common sense. Just make sure it looks healthy, right?
Yeah, I mean that sums it up pretty much.
All right. So, I mean, without going crazy, I've kind of answered all the questions I had for the fish section.
Mhm.
On to the cleanup crew. I don't have a ton of time left, um, but I still have cleanup crew questions. This is one thing that's highly debated online. How big should your cleanup crew be?
Well, this is the problem that I've had is I went the recommended and did like the packs online, and the
Yeah,
crew
and
the
it's like
the
you
crew
get like
starved to
a
death.
thousand of them for
Yeah.
like a 50-gallon tank. Like,
Well, I think it's more people want to make money on it. You don't really need
I
that
think
much.
so.
I
Yeah.
haven't. I put the cleanup crew in 9 months ago and haven't added a single item except for a starfish here and there. And
Yeah.
I'm losing cleanup crew, consistently because things die. But
Yep.
it's going to depend on what kind of algae you have, what kind of nutrient problems you have. If you have to battle algae, you might need the extra cleanup crew. But be aware, once you solve the algae problem, they need to have a food source. So I would not oversize your crew. I would start off small, see how they are, and then adapt as you go, adding some, rule of thumb, you can add some every 3 months. Just add a couple snails, add a couple crabs or something every 3 months, and that keeps everything stable. So,
On to the next question, you kind of answered it just now. Um, when buying a cleanup crew, do you strictly like hermits? Do you like snails? Do you go with both?
I do a multi-prong approach when it comes to cleanup crew. You're gonna want something that scavenges like a hermit crab, so getting blue legs that are cheaper. Just be aware of blue legs. Hermit crabs are notorious for killing your snails, so be aware of that. And I just change up my snails. I'm really big on turbo snails. I just really like how they are. So I do a little bit of everything. I have what 3 or 4 different starfish in my main display. Plus I have some in the
Yeah.
sun. Plus shrimp and all that stuff. So nothing. It's a multi-prong approach is what you need to look at. Get a little bit of everything. So.
So with that, hermit crabs, I had like two or three snails in my tank. They're all three gone. And what it's from is I come into my tank, check it out in the morning as everybody does, and they're flipped over.
Hmm.
I flip them back over. 3 days later, they haven't moved. They're dead. So I did buy some nefarious snails um, because they can flip themselves over. I put in a couple snails that I know go under the sand. I haven't seen them, so I don't know if
Yeah.
they're
Well,
staying
I
under
didn't know.
there.
Did we decide if you had a magnesium issue or not? I don't remember because if your magnesium is elevated up to around 1500 or higher,
It is.
snails become lethargic, in which they're not able to stick to the glass, and they're not able to feed themselves, and they're not really moving very well. So they end up dying as a result. So if you guys have snails that are not moving, you need to double check your magnesium level and get an
That's good
appropriate
because that's
range.
probably exactly what it is. Because I have
Hmm.
elevated calcium, alkalinity, magnesium.
Hmm.
I
From
don't
that
dose
salt. Yeah.
anything. It's from my salt. I've been doing new water changes with new salt. I still haven't been able to get it down. So you're right though, because I've actually witnessed them sticking to the side and then falling off. So
Hmm.
that it could be very well why
Hmm.
I don't see them anymore. They're
Yeah.
probably just stuck
Well,
somewhere.
they're most likely dead because they weren't able to feed or defend
Yeah.
themselves from the hermit
So
crabs. So.
yeah, that's probably exactly right. And here's another thing that I've thought, like, I'm kind of fighting this cyano thing. Do emperor crabs eat cyano?
Um,
Is that more of a green hair algae thing?
it, man, it's so crazy. It's like throwing a peppermint shrimp in there and hoping it eats Aptasia.
Yeah.
You could pick crabs in general to attack the cyano, but the best method for cyano is removing it manually and finding the nutrient problem and fixing it, which we discussed in a previous
Which
video.
we know what it
Yep.
is. It's
So you can go ahead and do it, but I wouldn't be spending any extra money on a crab hoping it would eat
and
red slime
and
algae.
with the emperor crab, they could potentially start trashing my zoas, right?
Yeah, I've even had blue-legged hermit crabs start picking at zoas. Man, it's so hard to say. I mean, it's just like buying the fish that is known to eat coral, but doesn't mean it's going to eat coral. Not doesn't mean every angel's going to eat coral. It's personalities, man. I've had rogue emerald crabs that go around and start picking off polyps and start picking at my SPS and just
Or
being an
like your
asshole.
eel, which is
Yeah,
known to eat fish, but yours is like you
it's
say, a
cool.
model citizen.
Yeah, yeah, so basically you could try, but I wouldn't, like I said, I wouldn't go out and spend a whole bunch of extra money on something hoping it would eat it. You just, do a little bit and see, but it can.
Um, I know you have sea stars. What I want something that's going to stir up my sand. I'd like a sea star. I don't want anything big. What do you suggest for like my 75 that's going to stir up the sand and potentially clean the glass or something?
The chocolate chip Sea Star,
Yeah.
but the problem is it's not always reef safe. It is, and then it isn't. There's some debate on that. I've never personally had one because I heard that they were not reef safe. But I do know what 3 or 4 people who have them in a reef tank and have no problems. So just be aware of that. And something like a serpent star would be fine. They're totally fine. A brittle star, they're all going to mix up the sand a little bit. That Linkia Sea Star is pretty cool. You good with the sand. But just be aware, reef safe with caution, all that stuff. Just monitor it and to make sure it's, doing what it's supposed to do.
All right, well, that sums it up. That checked off every question on my list. I
Sweet.
appreciate you spending the time again. It's been fun.
All right. And
Any thoughts to sum it up?
No, I mean, that's pretty good. I mean, if anybody else has any extra questions, you can just put in the comment section below. Trying to answer as many questions as I can. It seems like the more subscribers I get, which is cool, just the more questions that come in, which then takes me a little bit longer to answer them. But I do answer everybody's.
You're gaining on 1,000, bro. Quickly.
Getting there. Yeah, so I got to get that together as well. So
yeah.
I appreciate everyone watching and sticking around. And as always, I'll put Mike's link in the description below so you can check out his channel. And as always, guys, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks.
Peace.